That this is Radio Entrepreneurs, and I'm here again with Mark Z, my co-host for the week. And Mark, we have a returning serial guest.
Well, I don't like the term cereal except the one you eat, but when we talk about Eric Rothenberg, who's senior partner at Orsi, Arone, Rothenberg, Eric is talented, and besides being a serial entrepreneur and in many ventures, he's an expert in the tax field, and Eric's here to talk about some of the issues that affect us in our country. And Eric, great to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
Are you on the cliff?
I'm not on the cliff, but I talk about the cliff.
Let's go.
Well, I think the people who are listening probably want to try and get some advice on what are they supposed to do between now and year end for two kinds of tax planning. One would be income tax planning and one would be estate and gift tax planning, both of which, if Congress doesn't act, will not be good for them next year. And so a lot of my clients are talking about making gifts this year in anticipation of no action for next year, and also making withdrawals from certain pension plans, which will be taxed at a low rate this year and not next year. And of course, if you're an individual with a large amount of capital gains and dividends, that's also something you really want to consider between now and year end.
Right. So, we all hear about the fiscal cliff. Do you feel that people really aren't addressing it properly personally? I mean, on a federal level, we don't have a lot of control anymore. It's in somebody else's hands. We voted.
Well,
but personally, we do have some control.
Well, Jeff, for many years, people that I've talked to are always upset because Congress tends to act only at the last minute. And the best thing anyone in America can do when they're planning for their lives is know in advance what's coming. And here we are in December, a month before next year's law comes into effect. And if you look and read the papers and watch television and listen to the radio, you'll hear that there's no agreement, that the Republicans and the Democrats are very far apart, have a very different view of what they ought to do. So the question is, what will happen when you have a Congress that was recently elected and nobody knows where they're going? Are we going to end up with tax increases or revenue slashing? And that is some of the issues that people have to face. And so you're giving them advice when you don't know and they don't know what actually will be the tax laws next year. It's up in the air.
You know what's interesting is I think that the Democrats feel they have a mandate when they really don't, and the Republicans feel that the Democrats, because they feel they have this mandate, there's not wiggle room for their proposals. So I think both parties, I think the Republicans have to understand realities, and the Democrats have to sort of see if they can come a little bit toward the middle, because we have a situation here that on this financial cliff we're talking about that has led to a lot of uncertainty.
And I disagree a little bit with that. I mean, we didn't get a big mandate from the vote.
Right.
But Romney proposed his plan, which is, in my opinion, very similar to what's being proposed today by the Republicans, and he didn't win. And while Obama proposed pretty much what he's now proposing, which is tax increase for the wealthy, and didn't win by a big mandate, again, he did
But he
win.
won. Right.
So is that enough to say we ought to go all one way or all the other? Probably not, but I think it certainly says we ought to at least have some tax on the wealthy. And when, during the campaign, Mitt Romney exposed his financial condition, saying,
Right.
I made $20 million and was taxed only on 14% of that.
Right.
I think a lot of people are upset by that, saying someone who makes $20 million should pay more than that's below the lowest bracket in the country for not the middle class, but the lower class.
Right.
That's the lowest bracket, and that's a shame that someone can make $20 million and not chip in more than 14%.
Correct, but my point is, in order to have Congress work, you've got to have some kind of collaboration. I mean, doing nothing is not necessarily doing something. So what I'm saying is Democrats obviously can say, we won, but we're not necessarily empowered, because in order to get things through, you still have a House that's Republican controlled, a Senate that's Democratic controlled, and obviously a president. So in order to get moving, it's still very polarized. I thought that things might come a little bit more toward the middle after the elections.
I
don't
didn't.
seem to have. I was hoping.
No, because everybody believes they have their own mandate.
Right.
If you're an individual in Congress and you're a Republican, you feel that you have in your area a mandate. If you're the president, you feel you have a mandate. So they're still proposing their own positions to each other.
Except that, as I said, the mandate was there, but it's a small one.
It's a
And
small
so
one.
that's why I say there should be some tax increase on the wealthy.
Right.
And where that is, it could be over $500,000 of income, or it could be some other number. But if the original numbers that Obama was proposing were, say, 250, and he says, okay, I don't have a full mandate, but I should do something, then maybe he should step it up a bit and say someone making over $1 million a year has to pay an increase. And if the Republicans say, no, if you're making over $1 million a year, we're not going to allow you to have any tax increase over the prior year, I think that's going to be less than favorable by the public and say,
Well, and they want to close up tax loopholes for foreign corporations, American corporations doing business overseas. There are a lot of loopholes they'd like to see. They'd like to see more controls on election spending, and there are a lot of things that Americans voted for, but they're not necessarily representing the full opinion of the country.
Eric, as a business person yourself, what are your thoughts on when the Republicans have argued that this increase is not going to necessarily lead to a lot in terms of income, but at the same time it will affect our businesses in terms of us putting money in and doing some hiring?
well, I think the number crunchers, and there are a lot of number crunchers in America right now, both on the Republican and Democratic side, saying we use software to say if you change the tax law by this amount, this is how much the revenue will be increased or decreased by lowering, for example, the itemized deduction for the home mortgage, the so-called sacred deduction. Most of the wealthy people, the people who are making large sums of money, don't have high mortgages, if they have a home mortgage at all. And so for them to say, let's eliminate the home mortgage deduction, I don't think Mitt Romney's got one.
Right.
I haven't looked at his returns, but I imagine many of the wealthy people have no mortgages on their personal residences and one second residence, which you're allowed to deduct. And so eliminating that will really affect mostly the middle class.
The upwardly mobile class.
Yep. And for them, it's a big
The
deduction.
entrepreneurial class.
Yep, exactly. And I agree with that. And I think
Which accounts for 80% of job creation in this country.
I agree with that too. The small business people are the people that are still the large numbers of payrollers in America, and that's why we have local days where we say buy local. That's why we say have specials and tax deductions for the local small business person, because it's very effective to be able to start up a new business.
Well, do you think Senator Warren got a mandate too? She thinks she did. And I'll get closer to home, it's harder to talk about it.
No, well, as I said, I think that she has a mandate, but it's a small one. It's not a big one. We've had certain elections in the past where someone's won 60-40, 75-25. Those are mandates.
The only mandate I think that happened with her is that people don't care what her heritage was.
Yeah,
That was a total distraction from the reality of the election.
that's correct. And as a friend of Scott Brown's, I wished he had let that one go earlier than he did, but I think she'll be a good senator for the country. She has a lot of skills in the banking area that will bring.
Well, she's very intelligent.
And she's very intelligent.
Right.
I don't think anybody disputed that, not even Scott.
No, he didn't. No. He talked about her nicely, about her intelligence in his pickup truck. So, Eric, where do you think all this is going? What do you tell people? Besides just sitting back armchair, saying this is the problem, what kind of recommendations do you make?
Well, for people in estate planning, I tell them that first, Massachusetts doesn't have a gift tax, so you can make a gift tax free in Massachusetts. Federally, we still have the high cutoffs for the unified credit, so we can make gifts federally that won't cost them any money, no tax, no right of a check, and that's good. So some people are thinking normally in their 70s, they still tend to hold on to their money and they don't want their heirs to have it early, but in their maybe 85 to 90, they think, okay, now's the time to start giving away. I think it's forcing them to give it away earlier in their 70s and mid-70s to start making gifts to kids in trust out of their hands, out of the estate of the parents. Now, while they can, make a gift early, use up the unified credit while it's what it is. We went through this all through 2001 through 2010, when we didn't know what would happen. I mean, George Steinbrenner managed to die with millions and millions of dollars and pay no estate tax because we had that year.
Hey, the Yankees need that money. A-Rod's going to be out half the season, and they need that money to go build that baseball team.
Yeah, I don't think they're getting that money, but I think he got away with
You
a
don't
great
think that
deal.
you don't think that that's what the Steinbrenner family's thinking about now? We got all this extra cash. We can use it to build the team.
I don't think that's the way rich people think. I'm sure Robert Kraft doesn't think that way either.
He likes to build his team.
Yeah, he's done what a great job he's done on making that valuable.
By the way, he's a tennis player too, and maybe he's looking for someone for a foursome.
Oh, I'll be happy to play with Robert Kraft. He's shorter than me.
He's also a good tennis player. I've
I'm
had the
sure he
pleasure.
is.
Right.
But we digress.
Yes, we
do
do.
digress.
We didn't really, but people don't know that Eric and I were talking about tennis off air.
I think people have to make some assumptions about their personal income taxes with the rates going up, with dividend tax going up,
Their children.
their children. This is a time that I think we're not. One of the things that's weird about our tax system is the Supreme Court has allowed tax law changes to be retroactive. That was fought for a bunch of times in the 80s and 90s, where late in the year Congress would pass a tax law and make it retroactive to the first of the year. And that was allowed. And that's something that is scary for people because people had sold businesses when the capital gains rate was X, and then suddenly in the middle of the year they changed the law, and what they had planned for their lives at a rate of X suddenly became a higher number Y.
Clawback.
Yeah, and they challenged that and they lost, and that's a tough one because we are going to have a tax law change in 2013,
I'm always worried about a clawback.
and we don't know what it is. We don't know what to expect, and we know it's going to change because we have to deal with the fiscal crisis.
Right. Eric, if someone wants to get hold of you to learn more about how to deal with these situations, maybe even a tennis game, how would they contact you?
For tennis, they should call you. And for me, I'm at 160 Gould Street here in Needham, Massachusetts, and the phone number is 781-239-8900, and I'm on the web. Just Google my name.
Plus, you have a great Google name. Website, orlawyers.com.
That's oarlawyers.com.
Very good. And you're also always a charming guest and charming to be with. I encourage anyone to give you a call. Remind everyone that my name is Jeffrey Davis. I'm here with Mark Z and Eric Rothenberg. We'll be right back after this break on Radio Entrepreneurs.